We're going to come now to a short reading from Scripture, and then I'll offer some reflections on that. I'm reading from Luke's Gospel, from chapter 4. When Jesus came to Nazareth, where he'd been brought up, he went to synagogue on the Sabbath day, as was his custom. He stood up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was given to him. He unrolled the scroll and found the place where it is written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set free those who are oppressed, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favour." Then he rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. The eyes of all in the synagogue were fixed on him. Then he began to say to them, "Today, this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." The beginning of Luke's Gospel is set in a time of conflict and turmoil, a time of uncertainty and unrest, a time when the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, a time when oppressed people felt hopeless, whilst military superpowers got stronger and stronger, a time of much injustice and growing mistrust in political leaders. Nothing at all like the times we live in then. Or perhaps not. And into that context, into that whole political milieu of Palestine in AD 0, steps Jesus of Nazareth. And here at the beginning of his ministry in Luke's Gospel, we have set out what lots of biblical scholars refer to as the Nazareth Manifesto. It's an excellent book by Sam Wells of that title, which inspires some of what I'm sharing with you this evening. And here in a manifesto, you set out what you're going to stand for, don't you? You set out what this is going to mean for you, what your ministry, what your objectives are. And that's what Jesus is doing here at the beginning of his ministry, setting out what he stands for. We're heading into a time of general election, aren't we, here in this country? And we're going to start hearing lots about manifestos. But I doubt you'll hear one better than this. I doubt you'll hear a better one than Jesus's in Luke 4, reading from what we now think of as Isaiah 61. Because he sets out a manifesto that's going to be all about social justice, that's going to clearly say that I, Jesus, am on the side of the oppressed, that I'm joining in with those most in need, that I'm on the side of all the people who you think of as marginalized, as outside, as suffering, as somehow not privileged. And he lists some of those people. He starts to reel off the sorts of people who would have been left outside of society: the poor, the refugee, the prisoner. And to say, that's who I'm for. That's what my manifesto, that's what my ministry, that's what my leadership is going to be about. And when you read the whole of Luke's Gospel, when you kind of go on the journey with Luke, it only takes a few hours, I recommend it if you've got nothing else to do this evening, is you begin to see that there's a social justice thread all the way through. And I wonder if you couldn't even make the case that actually it's the social justice agenda, it's what Jesus stands for in this manifesto that is what leads to him being crucified. It's the I stand for upsetting the status quo that leads to the crucifixion. He so upsets the authorities, the powers that be, by being not on their side, by not choosing the side of privilege, but choosing the side of the oppressed, that eventually they have to crucify him. And if there's no crucifixion, then there's no resurrection. There's certainly no church in 2024. There's not a Methodist Relief and Development Agency, and you'd all be doing something very different with your evenings tonight. And yet, we're here. We're on this call. You're gathered tonight from Liberia through to Pontefract and all the places in between. We're here because Jesus upsets the status quo. Jesus inverts the systems of oppression. Jesus says, peace, yes, and we heard Jeremiah talk so eloquently about peacemaking before, but Jesus says there'll be no peace without justice. That it is the justice, it is the lifting up of the oppressed, the poor, those suffering, those left out and isolated. It's if we bring them into the centre that we can really change things. And that's the kind of work that All We Can's been involved in since long before it was called All We Can. That's the kind of work that Shift has been involved in for at least as long as they've been an All We Can partner and many years before. That's the kind of work that we've heard from Jeremiah tonight about individual young women whose lives are changed right through to whole communities, whole cultures, whole ways of thinking about gender and justice that are being transformed. I hope you heard in that something of the absolute commitment to All We Can's vision statement, every person's potential fulfilled. That's what Jesus is saying in Luke 4, that I came, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, so that every person's potential might be fulfilled. Not so that we might paper over the cracks of injustice and make ourselves feel a bit better, but that we might genuinely change things. Not that we might have a big concert and raise a load of money and send it around the world so that we all feel better, but that we might genuinely change things. Not that I might give a tenner but keep 100 quid to myself, but that we might genuinely change things. That's the kind of genuine justice that I'm excited about this evening. It's the kind of genuine justice that motivates so much of my energy and activity around this amazing work that All We Can has been doing and will continue to do. It might be a small organisation, it might be quite localised in individual communities, but it's genuinely transforming those communities, not papering over the cracks of injustice, but genuinely transforming them. And that's why I've committed my life to this cause. I've spent the last 9 years as part of this amazing staff team and now act as an All We Can champion in my local church, in my local circuit, in my district, in my community, helping to continue to advocate for this really important work. It's why my wife and I are committed regular givers. It's why that I'll continue to want to support All We Can in all the ways that I can. And why I'm here this evening to invite you to do the same. Because Shift need your support, as we've just heard, or We Can need your support. And I know many of you on this call are part of that journey of support, and thank you. Because back to Jesus for a moment. He's reading from the scroll of Isaiah, isn't he? And in the Isaiah passage, Isaiah lays out these 5 things that are going to be this kind of manifesto of justice. The Spirit of the Lord is anointed to bring good news to the poor, release to the captives, recovery of sight to the blind, freedom to the oppressed, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favour. The best kind of translation I've heard of that last one, to proclaim that this is God's time. This is God's year. Some people also link it back to the Old Testament idea of jubilee and letting go, freedom for those who are enslaved or in debt. Jesus saying these 5 things, and it sounds great, but if we put ourselves in the mind of his original audience, they're probably nodding along. They've probably heard a sermon about Isaiah 61 before. Some of them might be like, oh, not this again. Some of them probably knew it off by heart and were joining in as Jesus is reading through these passages. Maybe a few people even thought, oh, I really like this bit from Isaiah. I wonder what this young whippersnapper of a rabbi is going to have to say about this. He says the 5 things, and they're interesting enough. But then he says a 6th thing. He says, today, this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing. And it's at this point that they get angry. that original listening crowd. If we read on a little bit later, they take Jesus up to the edge of a cliff and threaten to throw him off, which is the passage that I think my local preacher's tutor was referring to when he said, Tim, if after your first sermon they don't try and kill you, you're doing it wrong. Which was some encouragement, at least. But it's a difficult thing, it's an angry thing, but it's also the most important thing. This verse from Luke could well be the beating heart of the gospel for me, because it's in this moment that what was dead comes to life. What was word is now flesh. What was Old Testament is now new covenant. The gospel, the good news, the invitation to be part of a justice movement is now incarnate in front of this little audience here in the synagogue, but also for us 2,000 years later. It's incarnate, it's amongst us. The invitation to be part of a movement that is seeking justice, real transformational justice, is available to each and every one of us. Because Jesus goes into the place where he is known and announces his commitment to that justice. That's what I like to see in this passage, that of all the places Jesus could have gone, he goes to the place he's probably best known before he starts to lay out his manifesto. He doesn't go off and hide with some strangers who he'll never see again. There's no accountability. He doesn't travel thousands of miles to a foreign country and try and fix a problem that he knew nothing about. He goes into the place where he is most known, most accountable, most likely to be held to this very high standard that he's just setting himself, and says, here's what I'm going to stand for, and it's going to be fulfilled in me. And so our invitation to you this evening is simple. Can you do the same? Can I do the same? Can I go to the places where I'm most well known and stand for justice and make a difference for justice? Can I be Christ's hands and feet? To be this scripture, this Isaiah scripture so full of social transformation, can I fulfill that in your hearing tonight? Do I dare? Many of you are All We Can supporters, and thank you for that. Many of you have been on a long journey with us, and thank you for that too. Tonight, we're simply inviting you to make a substantial difference again, to come and join us, whether for the first time or the 100th time, to put your hands in your pockets and support us, to support the kind of work we've heard about tonight, to play our part, our gospel part in making a difference. So tonight, the invitation is to something substantial, something transformative, something that might make a real big difference, something generous. I know and I realise there are some people on this call with the ability to make a really substantial gift to All We Can, and many of you have already done that in the past, and we are so grateful. But as you can see on this slide, a gift like £40,000 would enable 625 young people to go to the kind of schools, to pick up the kind of tuition that Jeremiah was talking about earlier on tonight, would enable so many of those stories to continue to ripple out, would make a real big difference. You've heard Jeremiah talk about the challenges associated with having reduced funds and facing the challenges of a cost of living crisis. Perhaps you, perhaps your church, perhaps somebody you know, perhaps some grant or trust fund that you have access to could make some substantial difference this week. So I invite you to have a little look at this slide. For others of us on this call, a gift like £500 would be a huge sacrifice, and we recognise that too. And Finn began by talking about the woman with the copper coins. We know that times are hard and have affected many of us. That's why we're here tonight, to reflect on what does that look like for our partners around the world. So if there is something you can contribute, I know your support will make a difference. For example, that £500 gift that could support the amazing work of our partner, Cough Carway. I was with them just 2 months ago. We got to stand witness to their amazing ability to stand with families in need, to stand with people suffering from the impacts of abuse, to fight for the rights of children like this young man, Kasim, who I got to meet. He is pictured with his carer, Hope, who is safe and is getting to grow up in a safe environment because of the amazing work that Cof Carway does. Doesn't cost a huge amount, but it makes a huge amount of difference to him. So in just a second, we're going to play a short video in which we'll see some of the work that that Jeremiah's been talking about. Some of you may have had a chance to see this video already, but first let me just talk you through some of the practicals involved in making a donation tonight. You can phone the office. The number is there on that slide, and make a gift whilst you're still on this Zoom call, if you like, or make a note of it and call as soon as we're off. You can make a back transfer. You can scan that QR code or click on the link there, allwecan.org.uk/give, and make a gift here on our website. And you can do that while we're here. You can do that as part of your response to all that we've heard tonight, to your response to the gospel, your response to how we engage with our own local communities, your response to Jeremiah's stories and the amazing work of Shift. Tonight, the scripture is fulfilled not only in our hearing, but in ourselves, by us, working together to make a difference, by each of us playing our part and giving what we can in time, in energy, in expertise, and in financial gifts. And thank you for that. We're now going to play the campaign video and just invite you to use this moment, use the time while the video is playing, to think about your response. What is it that you're going to do? Perhaps have a conversation with somebody who you've joined the call with tonight, if there's somebody in your house, or have a little think, have a pray. And as you hear Jeremiah's story again, and we hear the work of Shift, this is your chance to help be part of the response. Thanks.
I was already giving up. Got children, you have to go be telling people no food to eat. So the best thing I could do is to die. Because I got tired of my children. Everybody is looking up to me and they are not getting anything. My auntie told me, school will not for with me. I said, I want to go to school. And she said that she don't have the hay because I thought my father was dead. And I saw hatred rising from all anger, which caused me to leave home and get into the street.
In the context of Liberia, majority of our people are illiterate. After the Civil War, a whole generation have missed out on education. Mothers around here are single mothers, you know, and upbringing of a child, just a single person, and then more you can read and write, almost like in the dark.
I heard about this school through a little girl who called me auntie. But we can say no, but then let's start with the auto literacy so you can be able to write your name.
Literacy is the bedrock for our organization. I see adult literacy as the thread that holds everything together. Help them to be able to find something to do, maybe a job. It builds self-confidence and self-esteem. For those who can read and write, some of them have very brilliant ideas, but they don't see themselves as people who are worthy of any contribution. They don't think that they have anything to offer. And then when people are making decisions, they don't count on them. So most of the benefit that they should have gotten, even from government or other sources, it doesn't reach them.
For a woman to get a literacy skill, it's important that me now can read my name. It's good to know what you want to be and what you want to do. So it's good for a woman to learn to read and write.
Most of what we're hearing from the learners, we're completing is that to read and write is good, but after that, what next? We are led by the community and the issues impacting them. In fact, they have more ideas better than us. They know exactly their issues. The community has so much. You just need somebody to help them to see clearly what they have. and how best to value what they have and make use of it.
I graduated from year 2017. I got the machine. I started practicing on my own. And I started getting customers small. I started getting strength.
Kids who have vocational skills, they quickly become independent, generating some funding to help themselves. They are able to advocate for themselves. They make their own decisions.
Tutoring job means a lot to me because I said now I'm able to feed myself, help my children with their schooling. You can see me now, I can sew my clothes. I have one class guide, one white class with a shower stepper. And I wore this to service for 3 years. People who saw it on me felt it was a uniform, not knowing it was the only clothes that I have to wear. And today, I can change clothes any hour, anytime. I got free now. Yes, nobody can jump on me. I'm giving up. You don't give what you don't have.
The significance of the partnership with All We Can. One of the good things is they said to us, we're not here to tell you do this or do that. We see them as a true partner. True partners will work with you in a way that when they are gone, you're much more better than they met you.
Chef have caused me today that can sing. I was a baker, but today I'm not a giver because I'm not only eating my own, I'm also stretching it. Yeah.
We invite you to join Shift today to help communities to tailor their journeys and fulfill their potential.
Charity begins at home because charity begins with you, and it begins tonight. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you again for your support. Thank you for seizing this opportunity.